In court, my ex-husband said she was just a housewife. I built everything. His lawyer smirked as they took everything I owned. I sat silent. 2 years later, the tech company he was begging for a deal with revealed their silent investor was me. His jaw dropped when I was married to Dean for 13 years. We lived in Boulder, Colorado. I was 21 when we met, working at a small bookstore near campus. He came in looking for some startup finance books. Wore a hoodie and had that big dreamer energy, talked fast, moved faster. I thought it was confidence. It wasn't. It was arrogance dressed up as charm. He told me he was building something revolutionary. He had ideas, plans, whiteboards full of notes. Said he needed someone who understood the long game. I thought he meant someone he could build with. What he meant was someone who would wait while he figured himself out. I was that person. At least, I tried to be. I got pregnant 2 years into our marriage. Our son, Mason, came early. It was hard, really hard. Dean wasn't ready. He pulled away. Stayed out late working. I stayed up rocking our newborn to sleep, wiping tears off my cheeks in the dark so no one would hear me cry. But I didn't leave. I told myself it would get better. When our daughter Ava came 3 years later, I was already numb. I had left my job to be home full-time. Dean convinced me it was better for the family. Said we'd save money on childcare. Said he needed me to run the home so he could run the business. I paid the bills, did the taxes, scheduled meetings with his partners when he forgot. I even built his first investor presentation in PowerPoint. He never mentioned that to anyone. Dean launched 3 apps in 6 years. All failed. Still, I stayed. I budgeted every dollar, sold my wedding ring once to pay rent when we fell behind. He didn't know that part. I never told him. I protected his ego more than I protected myself. Then, somehow, one of his dumb projects hit. He launched an app that tracked sleep cycles and paired users with meditation soundtracks. The algorithm wasn't even his idea, he bought it from some kid in Boston, but the branding and marketing caught on. Suddenly, we were flush with cash. And just like that, I became invisible. He bought a Tesla. Then a second monitor. Then started traveling to LA for networking. I asked him if we could finally fix the leak under the kitchen sink. He said, "Can you not be so dramatic all the time?" I found the texts by accident. His iPad buzzed during dinner. He stepped out to take a call. I saw her name, Bree. Young. Blonde. Marketing girl with a fitness blog. She was in my house once, he said she was just helping with promo videos. Turns out, she was helping with a lot more. One of the messages said, "She doesn't get you like I do." I stared at the screen for 20 straight minutes. I didn't scream. I didn't confront him right away. Instead, I started copying the messages. Every one of them. That night, after the kids were asleep, I asked him straight up, "Are you seeing someone?" He paused. Just long enough to answer the question without speaking. Then he said, "I'm not happy." I said, "That's not what I asked." He replied, "I think we've grown apart." The next day, he moved out. A week later, he served me divorce papers. Filed first. Claimed abandonment. Said I had neglected the marriage. Then came the real betrayal. His lawyer was one of those cocky Boulder guys who wore loafers with no socks and acted like the courtroom was a stage. He leaned in, slow and smug, and painted me as some useless, lazy wife who sat on the couch for a decade while Dean built an empire. They didn't mention the 2 part-time jobs I worked while raising the kids. Or how I helped proofread his launch emails and edited his pitch decks. They brought up how I hadn't filed taxes in my name for years. Of course I hadn't. Everything was in his name. The house? His. The accounts? His. The car? His. And me? Apparently, just some woman who did yoga and bought groceries. Dean never looked at me during court. He sat back in his chair like none of it mattered. I remember him nodding when his lawyer said, "She was just a housewife." That phrase. Just a housewife. I will never forget it. They took almost everything. Even my car. The judge gave me temporary spousal support and said we'd revisit things if needed. I didn't even cry. I just went home. No. I went to my sister's. She had a tiny place in Fort Collins. 1 bedroom. I slept on the couch. Got a job waitressing at a brewery downtown. Worked lunch and dinner shifts. Bussed tables at night. Sometimes I'd come home with aching feet and ice my knees while reading business blogs on my phone. I didn't have a plan yet. But I knew I'd never let someone do that to me again. I started learning. Quietly. Online courses, business forums, Reddit threads, YouTube videos. I'd listen while folding laundry or washing dishes. I started following angel investors on Twitter. Took notes in a spiral notebook like a high school kid studying for finals. One night, I found a group of early-stage investors on a Facebook group for women in tech. I messaged one of them. We talked. She helped me learn what to look for, how to vet founders, what traction really means. I saved what I could from my tiny spousal checks and tips. Skipped meals. Wore old shoes. I turned $9,000 into an investment. It was a Denver-based startup. 2 guys working on AI-driven software for managing medical data. Not sexy. Not buzzy. But smart. They were nervous when I reached out. I wasn't some rich VC in San Francisco. But I showed up. I asked the right questions. I offered help, not just cash. Eventually, they said, "We'll take you on." Quietly. As a silent partner. That was enough. I spent the next 2 years working in the shadows. MedTrace grew. They landed a deal with a small hospital group. Then another. Then got featured in a healthcare tech blog. Their valuation tripled. I reinvested. I didn't take a single dollar out. I let it ride. By year 2, they were talking Series A. That's when I got the call from their CEO. "You're not gonna believe this," he said. I said, "Try me." He laughed. "Guy named Dean just pitched us his new app. Wants to integrate his platform with ours. Says it's a perfect partnership." My stomach flipped. "What's his last name?" I asked. "Vanders. Dean Vanders." Of course it was. I asked to be present at the pitch meeting. Silent partner or not, I needed to see it. The meeting was scheduled for 10 a.m. on a Thursday in downtown Denver. I didn't sleep the night before. Not because I was scared. But because I wanted every single detail to be perfect. I wore a plain gray suit. Hair pulled back. No makeup. I didn't want to look impressive. I wanted to look like nothing. Like someone Dean wouldn't even recognize at first. That's exactly what happened. He walked into the conference room with a fresh tan and that same fake confidence he wore like cheap cologne. His hair was slicked back. He was carrying one of those leather portfolio folders, like he was about to close some billion-dollar deal. He didn't even glance at me. I was sitting off to the side, half in shadow. Just the investor, as far as anyone told him. Dean shook hands with the CEO and head of development, then launched right into his pitch. He had a slide deck. Charts. A little video demo. I sat still and quiet as he walked them through his groundbreaking platform that, ironically, had massive holes in data security. He talked about his years of experience, about how he understood the healthcare space better than anyone. Then he made his biggest mistake. He said, "I built everything from scratch. No handouts. No help. Just grit." My fingers gripped the armrest so hard I thought I might break the chair. The CEO glanced at me. I gave the tiniest nod. It was time. When he was done, they opened the floor for questions. I leaned forward and spoke, calm and clear. I have one. Dean turned, slightly confused. That's when he really looked at me for the first time. His face drained. His mouth opened, then closed. He stuttered, "Wait, what?" I said, "Your data privacy model is weak. You're scraping from unverified sources. HIPAA would eat you alive." He tried to smile. "Well, we have consultants working on that." "No, you don't," I said. "You've got one part-time developer and a marketing intern." Now everyone in the room looked at me. Dean stood there frozen. The CEO said, "Dean, meet our silent partner. Lead investor. Strategic advisor." Dean's jaw dropped. You're with them?" I smiled. He took a step back. "This is some kind of joke." "No joke," I said. "You're standing in a room you thought you earned. But the only reason you got through the door is because I didn't slam it in your face earlier." He tried to recover. Said we should talk privately. I told him no. Everything that needed to be said had been said, 2 years ago, in court, when he and his smug lawyer laughed while stripping me down to nothing. But that wasn't even the twist. After the meeting, I found out something else. Dean hadn't come to pitch because he believed in his product. He came because his investors were bailing. He needed a partnership with us to stay afloat. Bree had left him a few months before. Turns out, being with Dean when he was broke again wasn't part of her plan. His startup was hemorrhaging cash. He was weeks away from defaulting on a line of credit that I had co-signed years ago, back when I still believed in him. Yes. That's right. When Dean filed for divorce, he left that piece of paper out of his disclosures. My name was still on one of the early business loans. That meant if his company failed, the bank would come after me. I sat in my car and stared at the document for an hour. Rage, disgust, pain, all of it swirling in my chest. But mostly, I felt something else, opportunity. I went home that night and pulled out every legal folder I had stashed away. I found the loan papers. There it was, my signature, clear as day. Dated back to 2017. Dean had convinced me back then to co-sign, saying it was just to get over the hump. We were low on cash. I was scared of losing the house. He said, "I swear I'll get us through it." But after the divorce? He never mentioned it. Never removed my name. Never made a single move to settle the debt on his own. If his company failed, I'd be liable. So I made a phone call. 2, actually. One was to my attorney. The second was to a woman named Tanya. Tanya was Dean's first employee at his old startup. She'd left before things took off. Said he took credit for her code and never paid her a promised bonus. We had a long talk. She had stories. Screenshots. Emails. What I learned made my stomach turn. Dean didn't just lie in court, he manipulated early investors, overreported downloads on his app, and used fake testimonials in his pitch decks. He fudged user metrics to lure in angel investors. He didn't even write the algorithm he claimed to have built. Someone else did. Someone who left the company before it launched and was paid to stay quiet. He built his second company on a pile of lies, and no one knew. Except now, I knew. I met with the MedTrace board quietly. I said, "We're not partnering with him, and I think we should go further." They were cautious. Said it might look petty. I said, "It's not petty. It's fraud." They gave me the green light to investigate. I hired a forensic accounting firm. Took 3 weeks. 3. When the report came back, it was worse than I thought. Dean had been using investor money to fund personal expenses, trips, meals, even rent. That's securities fraud. He was also in violation of at least 2 clauses in his investor contract. The moment we reported it, his backers would be forced to act. And they did. 2 days after I forwarded the report anonymously to his top 2 seed investors, Dean's company was frozen. Bank accounts locked. His CTO quit. The press caught wind of alleged misrepresentation in investment documents. He got pulled into a quiet investigation. No charges yet, but it was only a matter of time. He tried to call me. Left voicemails. Can we talk? Please. I didn't mean for any of this to happen. I'm losing everything. Again. I never responded. But it still wasn't over. I knew the bank could still come for me if I didn't move fast. So I filed a fraud claim through my attorney, showing the court that Dean had hidden the liability during our divorce. He'd submitted false paperwork and left out the business debt entirely. That meant my signature was tied to a loan he knew would blow up in my face. My lawyer filed a motion to vacate my responsibility from the loan, and to reopen parts of the divorce settlement under non-disclosure and fraud. I wasn't sure what the judge would do. But I wasn't sitting silent anymore. The hearing to reopen the settlement was held in the same courthouse where he once sat smug in a tailored suit, saying I was just a housewife. But this time I walked in calm. Strong. I wore the same gray suit. Same flat shoes. No flash. Just facts. Dean was already there. He looked different now. Pale. Shaky. The expensive suit didn't fit right anymore. His lawyer wasn't the same one either. That guy had ditched him after the fraud stuff started circling. This one was younger. Greasy. And scared. My lawyer stood up and laid out everything, the hidden loan, the withheld documents, the fraud. Then he dropped the forensic report showing Dean misused business funds and covered his tracks. The judge's face stayed stone cold, but I saw his jaw tighten. He turned to Dean and asked, "Is all this true?" Dean didn't answer at first. Then he said, "It wasn't supposed to go like this." That wasn't an answer. The judge spoke again. "You misled this court. You left out key financial documents in a sworn divorce filing. That's fraud." Then came the ruling. The judge vacated the original financial agreement. He said I was no longer liable for any of Dean's debts. But that wasn't all. He ordered Dean to pay backdated damages for fraud and legal costs. He reopened Asset Division, assigning me 40% of the business equity he'd claimed was solely his. That equity? It was now worthless, because his company had collapsed. But the final blow? The judge froze his personal accounts until the fraud investigations finished. Dean stood there in open court, watching everything slip from his hands. Over the next 6 months, the hammer dropped. The SEC opened an inquiry. 2 of his original investors sued. One of his past employees, Tanya, filed a claim for unpaid wages with my help. I gave her the lawyer she needed. Dean had to sell everything. His car. His condo. The rest of his shares in the dead company. He moved into a rental in North Boulder. His credit was destroyed. Word got around. Nobody in tech wanted to touch him. The circles that once worshipped him were suddenly empty. Bree? She'd left long ago. Posted a soft launch of her new boyfriend on Instagram, a real estate guy in Scottsdale. No mention of Dean. And me? I took the settlement money and invested in a small team out of Salt Lake City developing elder care tech. It wasn't flashy, but it mattered. Within a year, they went statewide. I wasn't just an investor this time, I sat on the board. Helped them hire. Built their pitch strategy. I still lived in Fort Collins, in a place I bought in cash. I upgraded the kitchen. Put in a garden. My kids had their own rooms when they stayed over. I told them everything when they were old enough to understand. Not to make them hate their father, but to show them what strength looks like when someone tries to bury you. One day, maybe a year after the court hearing, I ran into Dean at a coffee shop downtown. He was standing in line behind me. He looked thinner. Worn down. Still pretending like he wasn't broken. He said, "I heard about the elder tech deal. Congratulations." I turned and looked him in the eye. All I said was, "Turns out, housewives can build things too." Then I walked away. He tried to ruin me. Tried to erase me. Tried to rewrite history so he came out the hero. But I didn't just survive him. I beat him, in the very world he thought belonged to him. And I did it without shouting. Without begging. Just by knowing who I was, and finally making sure he knew it too.